Brightburn is a fucking frustrating mess. It's one of those films that's incredibly hyped up just from the promotional material and the trailers, as well as the concept, but when people ask to see it once it's out, they'll just be lacklusterly informed that it wasn't as good as they anticipated it to be, or it simply did not live up to its potential. And while I think that's true, and I think that's a nice way of condensing it, and you will hear from most critics that it didn't live up to its potential, but why? Why didn't this film do as well as I imagined it to be, after all the trailers led me to believe it would do so? But that kind of goes with every single trailer in existence. A few YouTubers who have mentioned specific chunks about the film, and why certain parts of the film kind of bring it all down. And while I do agree with them, there just hasn't been anyone to talk about the potential of the film and why it just didn't work. And that's what I want to thoroughly discuss. And surprisingly, I actually really like Brightburn. Does it have problems? Yes, but there is a reason why I kept watching scenes over and over and discussed it with others. It's because while the film isn't really good, it still has a handful of great scenes, and I can definitely see the film had a clear chance of reaching almost every single bit of potential. This video will be in 2 parts, and the second has its own sort of 2 points that kind of intertwine, so you may or may not notice. With that being said, biggest strength, you'd quickly think, is the main character Brandon Breyer, right? Sadly, this is where one of the biggest problems of the film lies. Brandon is the main character that you're supposed to invest in emotionally, but there's no emotional connection between the audience and the character, nor reason for his actions. To give a summary of him, the alien crash happens at the beginning of the film, so you already know that he's an alien. Tori and Carl find out and they finally believe that they can be parents, but 12 years later he's sort of activated as this sort of alien sleeper agent. When he finds it again, he chants the same message, take the world, but he also turns on his parents because he feels like he's being lied to. He also realizes that he has powers and what his motivation should be, and it kind of leads him on this gradual murderous rampage, leading to him making his own tag, his own costume, and killing one by one whoever opposes him. You got it. That's fun and entertaining to see all these really well directed gore scenes. What's the motivation? What's the reason Brandon does what he does? The film instantly wants you to understand because the alien ship dictates him to do so, but there's no sense of pathos whatsoever. For example, there's a school scene where he's being verbally bullied in the class, but then this girl Caitlin decides to encourage him, but then out of nowhere Brandon randomly starts stalking her in the middle of the night, in which he calls them out openly to everyone in the class, in which he results in him crushing her hand. You see, the problem here is rather than Brandon getting openly bullied by Caitlin, which would potentially lead to believing she deserved it, it's just another confusing scenario. How one of the kids bullies him and he's not the one with the crushed hand. Brandon is never the victim because Caitlin was right for calling him out, so crushing her hand was never justified. This is a similar case of Caitlin's mother, which results in another creative and amazingly awful death, and this is a similar case with his Uncle Noah. The majority of the deaths in the film never victimize Brandon, but instead Brandon just acts like a complete fucking idiot, and then just gets called out one way or another, and then they deserve a death. Brandon becomes far less compelling and actually interesting, and just becomes a massive prick, because there's just no justification. Because why should I like this stubborn character? I mean, of course, if he was bullied or even treated badly by society, him acting up there would still be no justification, but you can still at least sympathize and understand where it's coming from. So why should I sympathize with this character when nothing in the film encourages that? Black No Comedy worded it pretty well.
And here's the crazy part. The victims, the people that he ends up hurting in this movie, most of the time it is not their fault. Usually what happens is like this. He does something wrong. He goes over the line. Someone calls him out on going over the line. And then he goes, "That's your ass." And I'm like, no, Brightburn. That's not how this works. Let me give you a perfect example.
Take supposed villain movies like Joker or Chronicle. With Joker, the film opens with an anxiety-filled chase, which ends with Arthur taking an upsetting beating. It's completely obvious that you'd feel sympathy, and then there's a later scene on a subway train. Arthur's getting beaten up again, and it's a complete mirror to that scene. But it's a complete contrast payoff, because it ends with the 3 guys being shot dead. This is the pathos. Of course, it's not justified to kill them, but it comes from a place of anger and a matter of Arthur finally standing up for himself. Because it's a film, the audience will have legitimate sympathy and miraculously believe that what he did was the right choice. And that's true from the reception. Or take a film like Chronicle. That film has not only the contrast payoff of Andrew sticking up for himself against his bully Wade, but from the beginning of the film, he's in a terrible household. Both films are already applauded because of this pathos. Brightburn sadly just doesn't do this, and if the film had set up something to just feel sorry for Brandon, in which, by the way, that is minimal, the deaths could have been actually effective than just gore for gore's sake. They could have also just done a 180 where Brandon's parents are just genuinely abusive, and while that'd be similar to Chronicle, it would still have substance nonetheless. Anything is just better than the undeniable laziness here. And plus, there's only 2 instances where Brandon's actions are, without a doubt, kind of justified. One scene has his father, or Kyle, take him on a hunting trip in the forest, but it's only an attempt to kill Brandon. But once he realizes that, you get the idea. There was an actual pathos in this scene, and at the climax of the film, his mother Tori attempts to kill him while also trying to reassure him. And side note, she has the kind of in denial character of not believing any sort of criticism of Brandon, and continues this throughout the rest of the film, but I digress. Again, he also realizes what she's trying to do, and afterwards... And again, this is the setup and the contrast payoff where there is actual pathos. In short, Brandon is never similar to Thanos or Andrew Detmer or even Arthur, where you can understand from their point of view of why they commit the things they do, because despite only 2 deaths, there is no pathos, which makes Brandon not even like a cool villain, which is what he should be, and what I even desperately want him to be, but just kind of an asshole. Like I said in the pre-ramble, this point really consists of 2 different points that just kind of intertwine, so I'll try my best to explain. Another problem with the film that just kind of kills sort of any satisfaction when watching, this being part of my experience, is just how the film doesn't have a clear idea of which characters to focus on. Like for a better word, for the film's problems, the parents are the most effort the film has. You could say the film is also a matter of Brandon versus his parents given the second and third acts. And while Brandon's lack of emotional substance and Tori's really annoying mentality, at least it's something, there is a legitimate conflict as the mother is trying to be rational and the father is just almost hellbent on killing him. You see, when the film focuses on Kyle and Tori, the film turns into this fantasy drama where they suddenly realize their son is turning into a killer. When the film focuses on Brandon, the tone completely shifts to this kind of stylized superhero slasher film. The film just likes to jump back and forth between each tone, and neither reach their highest potential. The film has 1 foot in action horror and 1 foot in gritty drama, and it would have been nice if the film just picked 1 tone and committed to said tone. If the film wanted to be a gritty drama about the parents realizing the son has these powers for only evil purposes, then the film should have only focused on that. What this would mean is that the film would have little to almost no action or gore, and the main characters are Tori and Kyle, and only from their perspective, and they're just slow realization of what Brandon could become. This would also mean less pressure on the budget in a way, and the filmmaking would majority of the time be handheld, because I guess David Yarovesky wants to have a realistic tone whenever the parents were on screen. If the film wanted to focus on Brandon's growth as a character, when he realizes that he has all these powers from being woken up as a sleeper agent, then the film should have only focused on that. What this would mean is that it would be more focused on building Brandon to be a supervillain. The film would have this more stylized gore tone, even culminating to him going on a rampage during the end credit scenes of the film, and blasting Billie Eilish. I'll get back to this. There would be much more action scenes, as well as cut back on handheld, more composited shots, stretching the budgets to its limits, like what the film mostly doesn't, and include more songs. Side note, now like I said before, during the end credits they start just blasting Billie Eilish's Bad Guy, which I don't even know if I can even play that in the video, but that just makes the tone even worse, because they never play pop songs in the film, they only just play the songs that were just made for the film. And plus, when you play an end credit song, it ends up just being like the theme song of the movie. So you don't know what type of music the movie wants to use. So if the movie wanted to focus on Brandon, like I said before, just become like a superhero film, then it would just play more pop songs. and using Billie Eilish's song would just make a lot more sense. I'm only saying all this because when the film has one lean towards one genre and one lean towards other genre without any sort of direction to even blend said genre, neither tone lives up to its own potential and it almost comes across as just poor direction, as well as seeming like the film just has this identity crisis of what it wants to do with itself. Another side note, now during the end credits of the film, anyone who's seen it, they know that they're trying to do the whole evil Justice League by kind of stopping this whole like universe of just like evil superheroes and just supervillains. But one of them shown is the Crimson Bolt from the movie Super. Now, James Gunn, he produced Brightburn, but he directed Super, which is about this guy, Frank, who has to save his wife from a drug dealer, but he kind of just perceives it as a comic book. But the guy who's the conspiracy YouTuber is killed by the Crimson Bolt. No one's acknowledged this, but how is he talking about the Crimson Bolt when the Crimson Bolt killed him, especially when people are saying that Super is actually a prequel to Brightburn? Talking about the film like this and just picking apart the story and tone, it just makes me a bit sad, because like I said before, I believe anyone just has a film that they were just seriously rooting for, and they knew the potential that was there, but it just sadly didn't do so. Brightburn is that film I was rooting for, and it sucks. But there were also other films, mind you, it was 2019. There were many great scenes, the filmmaking and the look of the film looked really great, especially because the budget was equivalent to a Blumhouse movie. And if they had the right ideals for writing Brandon, they could have made him into a likable, in fact kind of badass supervillain. Like, he could have been like Joker, or he could have been like Andrew Detmer. It was just tone deaf, and it had a really promising framework. The legitimate fans of the film are basically similar to the Venom fans. I don't agree with them at all, but it's fine, I guess. Unless you are going to see this movie just to get an opinion, which was basically my case, if you want a better movie just with a similar kind of premise, watch the ones I mentioned before, or you could watch this short film called Balloon. It stars this bullied kid with e-boy hair who gets superpowers, but it likes to be a little bit metaphorical, where the powers almost symbolize masculinity in high school. It's fun, it has an actual pathos, and the premise is similar right down to the kid looking exactly like Brandon, like an older version.